Thank you for inviting me to your Tech Symposium and the theme, Engineering Without Chaos. That's a theme that's near and dear to my heart. So I figured out how to do that, engineer without chaos, in my first management gig in around 1995 when I became the CTO of a very rapidly growing company. We grew from almost nothing to over $100 million in about 4 years. And there was a tremendous amount of chaos that came as a result of that massive growth in customers. These were all large bank customers and all sorts of demands. And we were continuously growing and reorganizing. So chaos was hitting us from everywhere. And it was kind of a sink or swim sort of situation for me. I needed to figure it out. So I did. And since then, I've been a bit of a turnaround guy. In the next 5 companies where I've been hired as the CTO, I've implemented the same methods. They were generally in chaos when I started and came out of it fairly well at the end of it. So my approach to this is really stupidly simple, but I've got a caveat. My experience is in software systems, pure software systems. Now, I've applied these ideas in other situations like operations and corporate IT and customer service, but not to so great as an extent. But I think there are nuggets in what I'm about to say that applies regardless of what you're managing. So please bear that in mind and take away whatever you think is valuable and use that. So again, the approach, stupidly simple, but sticking with it, well, that's the hard part. There's so many pressures and distractions and so many important things that are on the back burner that always need doing. And honestly, it never really worked for me when I was a consultant and I advised companies to do this. But then amidst all of the competing priorities, they never really did what I said, even though they acknowledged it was a really good idea. And it was because they lacked the commitment that comes from the certainty of having tried other things and failed, and then tried this and having it succeeded over and over again. But whenever I came to a company, I had that firm faith in that. So anyways, maybe take that as a lesson. It really does work. And management bandwidth is your scarcest commodity. Amidst, again, so many day-to-day distractions, you can really only focus on improving one thing at a time. I know it's sad, but it's also true. We all know managers who have 15 different initiatives to improve things, but never follow up with any of those things. Now, engineers are smart. They'll do it if you follow up. But if you just ask for something to be done and it costs them their own time, they won't necessarily do it because they're pretty sure that it'll just disappear and they'll never have to do anything because they have honestly better things to do, like engineer. But if you consistently follow up on something, if you say you'll do it and say it again, educate people, establish a system for checking up on if it's done, and then religiously check up on it on a regular basis, and then go back and feedback and say it again and say it again, then, within a few months, the habit becomes ingrained, and then you can go on and do the next improvement. So again, that's another caveat. So again, my approach, stupidly simple. Manage your capacity proactively, or your capacity will manage you, and then you get chaos as a result. So whenever I come in to a new company, that company usually has a rough sense of what they want to deliver and by when they intend to deliver it. By the end of this fiscal year, we plan on delivering X, Y, and Z to the market. So 100% of the time when I've come into a chaotic company, and when I apply my method initially to kind of quickly do a rough estimate of capacity versus the implied requirement, they're usually at least 3 to 5x off. That is, what's in everyone's brains about what can be accomplished is 5 times bigger than any reasonable, even rough estimate would indicate was at all reasonable. You have to get a little bit quantitative to see that, but that's kind of the situation. In other words, your eyes are bigger than your stomach kind of thing. The result is that dev is always late. Quality and security, for sure on. Security suffer because of the squeeze. Engineers are overworked, which creates low morale. Engineers can't do things properly, which creates low morale, which creates attrition, which means even fewer staff to do the same things, which is kind of a negative spiral down. Long-standing productivity-killing issues aren't dealt with. For instance, test pipelines, something like that. Eventually, the CEO and the board gets upset with this consistent kind of under-delivery and the perceived inefficiency. And every little thing at this point looks like inefficiency. So they start micromanaging. That makes things worse because typically micromanaging is focused relentlessly only on features and nothing else. And that makes things even worse. Eventually, the CTO is fired. And that's usually when I come in. So, okay. Stupidly simple, like I said, and this is how to do it. I'll tell you in 5 easy steps. Okay. So, step 1, establish a planning horizon. Okay, well, now if it's kind of release-based software, if a release every 6 to 9 to 12 months, whatever, coincide it with that release timeline. If it's more a SaaS type offering, where you're more continuously delivering to production, then establish it to be, say, the next 2 quarters, say 6 months, something that looks convenient. And that's going to be the period over time over which a bunch of things can be shipped to market. Then within that planning horizon, count the work days, subtracting out the weekends and statutory holidays and any like company days where nobody will be working like this day today. So, and that's the number of work days in your planning horizon. That's the starting point. Okay, that was step 1, establish your planning horizon. Step 2, establish your capacity across that planning horizon. So identify all the people who are available to work on this effort. Estimate everybody's vacation individually and subtract that from the work days. And then estimate everybody's work factor. I call it a work factor. A work factor translates work days into the number of ideal hours of individual contributor work on items in this effort that they can dedicate. So if a work factor is, say, 0.5, I use an arbitrary scaling unit of 8. So 8 times 0.5 that means they can do 4 ideal hours per workday on average across the plan, working on only individual contributor stuff. So I usually exclude meetings, any kind of meetings, even meetings dealing with the thing they're working on, any sort of field support stuff that comes in, any kind of tracking down of bugs and fixing bugs that aren't related to the thing that you're specifically working on, helping out others, training, all of that taken off. Even if you're ill for a little while, that's taken off. And so those hours are just those distilled hours that you can work on things. And, sometimes the most valuable people will have the lowest work factors because they're helping out all sorts of other people, or they're engaged in a lot of meetings, or they're doing a lot of field support. And also sometimes people with a lower work factor will make more productive use of those hours than someone with a higher work factor. And I'll tell you how we deal with that in a moment. You measure it. So it's really important that you measure it. So use a fine-grained time tracking of the ideal hours spent on feature work. And you continuously review and update your estimate for your work factor. If you're a developer, you'll look at how many hours you've been able to spend in, to date, and you make a new estimate for your work factor going forward based on that. Recording this time also really clarifies in everyone's mind the type of work that needs to be estimated, right? For when you're estimating features as well. So measurement is critical to close that loop. Okay, so number 1 was establish the planning horizon. Number 2 was estimating your capacity across the entire team. And the unit of that is what I call the effective coder day, these 8-hour chunks of ideal hours across the entire team available per work day. So the total capacity is just that number times the number of work days, right? So number 3 then is estimate the requirement during the planning horizon. So list out all the features. What's a feature? Feature is a business meaningful chunk of something. Typically in where I've worked, we've taken features, we've broken them down into epics, and then we've broken them down into stories, and then assigned the stories to individual coders. So there could be quite chunky things. So estimate for each feature how many ECDs, effective coder days, how many 8-hour chunks of ideal hours of individual contributor time is required to get it to code complete. So that, conflates estimates of, we're early days, we're estimating, well, what exactly are we building? We don't have a complete spec. So we're kind of guessing at that. How exactly are we building it? What's the architecture? What's the design? We're a little bit guessing at that, educated guesses. What's the inherent size of the thing? Whatever that means. You're estimating who will work on it. You're estimating how productive that person will be. And what comes out is an ideal hour estimate in these ECD units for each feature. You add those all up together, and that's your requirement during your planning horizon. And again, because you're already doing this time tracking, you can measure exactly how much time you're spending of these kind of dedicated hours, ideal hours on each feature. And as the devs record time against a feature, they actively go ahead and re-estimate the effort remaining based on all the new knowledge they've accumulated having worked on it. So they don't just do a subtraction of the time worked from the original estimate, they continuously re-estimate. So that's step 3. So step 1, establish the planning horizon. Step 2, estimate your capacity, these ECD units. Step 3, estimate your requirement in these ECD units. So step 4, make a plan such that your estimate of the requirement is less than about 70% of your estimated capacity. And step 5, as you go into planning, update that plan regularly, at least once a week, or if your technology allows, in real time. And as new requirements come in from outside, no problem. Size those in the same way, and you can swap things out of the plan and put new things into the plan. Or you can maybe move the date of the plan a little bit, or you can chop out requirements, or reduce requirements to make room for this. But that's the game you can play. Actively engage in replanning. Now, if you lose some capacity along the way, say a developer becomes ill or quits, adjust the plan to maintain that 70%. If some features are like overrunning their estimates and the new estimates indicate you're now offside on your plan, adjust the plan to maintain that 70%. The attitude towards that plan is really key. The attitude is that it's not a commitment. It's the current target that's rife with uncertainties. So, and we're not trying to resolve all those uncertainties in advance. We're kind of embracing those uncertainties. And all of management and all of stakeholders embrace that management of uncertainty. And I say management of because that plan becomes the repository for accumulating truth and accuracy, right? So as we know more and more and more about these features, our estimates will get more and more accurate. And what's really important is that as soon as some news breaks, that goes into the plan, and then we deal with it as a management team. So sometimes getting that initial feature estimate out of people is a bit rough because they're not used to this. You don't know so much. So I just ask, whoever's most knowledgeable to take their best guess. So it might go something like this. We say, I describe very roughly what the thing is. And I say, give me an estimate in ECDs of individual contributor work on that. I say, that's impossible to do that. I don't know anything. I say, no, well, look, give me your best guess because you're the most educated on this. You know the most about this area. What's your best guess? And no, I refuse to give you my best guess. Well, okay, how about 200 ideal days? 200 ideal days. No, that's way too high. Oh, okay, good. How about 20 ideal days? No, that's way too low. So we're getting somewhere already. 100? A little low. 150? Yeah, okay. Done. 150. It's in plan. The whole point is an estimate is better than no estimate, but it's not a commitment. So that was like very early days when we're not even decided whether it's in plan or not. Then we decide it's in plan. We maybe discuss it a bit more. We spend an hour discussing that thing. And then at the end of the hour, we make a better guess. And then you're working on things and it becomes next up. Well, now you get the team together, you do a full work breakdown structure on it, and you estimate the little things and you accumulate the estimates up, and now you have a better estimate. And then various people start working on various aspects of it. And if after they put, say, an ideal day in, then they make a re-estimate of the amount remaining. And all the time, you're just accumulating better and better and better estimates into your plan. And there's no such thing as bad news. If someone needs to extend an estimate, that's not bad news. That's kind of great news that you're getting reality informing what you're doing rather than wishful thinking, right? So, you say, well, so there's really no commitment at all. No. There is a commitment. There's a very strong commitment. The commitment is to work hard at actively exposing all the bad news in a very transparent way as soon as it's known. And that bypasses all the management chain. So you don't need bad news to go up the management chain. A developer just types a number and goes right to the top, right? Now the fallout may go back down the management chain. Why did you change it? And then that you come up with a discussion as a result of that. But that plan becomes an accumulator for increasing and increased truth and reality. And so all of that leaves plenty of time to do things right the first time. Refactoring code is necessary. Deal with tech debt and security issues. Work on efficiency improving projects at the same time. And look, devs love this kind of rational approach and the opportunity to do a good job and not feel that doing a good job is at variance with management expectations. So as a result, you get high morale, you get high retention, you start attracting great talent into the company, and you get a success spiral going upward. So with that, let me just quickly show you an example of one of these plans. So here's a sample horizon plan. This is patterned off of one of the companies I've worked at. And I've just anonymized it completely. And it's got the various sections to it. It's essentially only one page. It gives you everything that really the stakeholders, managers really need to know. So if we say start in the uppermost corner, upper left corner, over here. There we go. We see a plan start date and a plan end date. So this is the planning horizon, and there's a 121 plus 36, 157 work days in that planning horizon. This plan was last updated as at this October 3rd date. So that is, we've put in 121 work days to date, and we have 36 work days remaining until this targeted end of development. And you can see, say, this 121 function in Excel to just look at the number of weekdays between two dates, taking into account a holiday schedule as well. That's on a separate page of this. So that's the first part. Then what we look at is, well, what is the capacity? Remember, that was step one. So step two is what's our estimate of the capacity. So as at October 3rd, our remaining capacity estimate is 365 ECDs, effective coder days. So that's in these 36 remaining work days, we have 365 ECDs left. That was step three, and I'll show you how to get that in a moment. And then step four is estimate the remaining requirement. So the remaining requirement is from the feature estimates, 285 remaining ECDs. And we can see that's a difference of 80 or 78%. So not quite at the 70% where I'd like to keep it. But this late in the plan, the uncertainties are less. So it's probably okay that it's at this level right now. Now notice that in the 121 workdays to date, we've logged 1109. So that means we spent 1109 ECDs on features, and which means that that was both part of the feature estimates and part of our capacity estimate. It becomes the same thing after it's passed, right? And our go forward estimate is 10.1. We're estimating we have 10.1 ECDs per workday across the team, and this is about a 30-person team. Whereas our actual measured number over the 121 days to date is actually 10.3. So that's good. We're a little bit of an underestimate, which is fine. So let's go see where some of that stuff comes from. So here's, for instance, is the developer capacity. That's where this 365 that I told you about up here comes from. So we've got these various teams, team A, B, C, D. So these were actual teams where I was working. And then you list the developer. I don't anonymize the developers when this is for real. This is real people's real names. All of them are 100% available. No more vacation left that they plan to be taking up until November 24th. And this is an estimate of their go-forward work factors. So the team lead, who does relatively little individual contributor work, is down at 0.2. Various people are estimating at 0.5, 0.35, and here's an intern who's estimated at 0.2. And then you just look at the number of work days remaining, subtract the vacation, multiply by that to get their ECDs available until the end of the plan. And then you basically just add that up across the entire team to get the 365. In terms of the 285, well, we look down here, and down here are the various features. So the first column here is a link back to, say, a JIRA feature level issue with the short description copied over, for instance. And then we see for each of the features, here's one that's basically done. And it took 23.06 ECDs to get it done. This was the actual done to date. Here's one that's not yet started. It's got an estimate of 20 ECDs and nothing done to date. Here's one that's almost finished, right? It's got a quarter of an ECD left. Here's a big one that's kind of, two-thirds of the way through, 177 done to date, 110 left. So we look at the ECDs remaining, and these are refreshed estimates done anew each time, and they're going to add up to the 285. And what we do is we throw each of them for planning purposes into one of these categories. And then if we look at the categories up here, this is the main one, the product management initiatives. And here the 836 is what's been done to date, plus the estimated remaining. That's making up 60% of this plan. That's stuff that's going to be appealing to the market, but that product management is really pushing. We have a tech debt bucket that developers own. We've agreed ahead of time that that's going to be, say, 12% of the budget. And then we can allocate that time in the dev team however we want to reduce tech debt inside the product. We had this category called business basics. We were shipping an appliance, so we needed to upgrade the operating system, upgrade the database, upgrade the version of Java. All those things needed to be done. You needed to keep them up to date so you can get the latest security patches and apply them. And so that was a category as well. And then we also had a customer service bucket because product management really wasn't addressing some long-standing issues that very particular customers say, look, if you give me this, it would make my life so much easier. So we allocated a bunch to the customer service team, and they could choose amongst those things that would either make their life easier to help diagnose problems in the field or to make the customer's life easier. Then if you look at these charts over here, this is sort of the history of where we've gone to date. So The 365 and the 285 are represented here. The 365 is the blue line. The 285 is the green line over here. And this is a record going back into time about what those numbers were at previous points in time. And so we can see that initially we started out with, we knew a little bit of what we were doing and we started working on that. And then over time, we gradually filled up the plan. There was some confusion, like around here. And we finally agreed on a plan, which I would say right around this date, is we got a solid plan, which not quite, again, 70%, but looks like kind of 80% or so. And when you see these big jumps in the blue, that's probably moving the date out. We're adjusting the date. And when you see big rises or big drops in the green, it's probably we're adding or removing features. When you see more gradual decreases, that means we're burning down the remaining requirement and we're burning down the remaining capacity. And I think at this point here was a case where the vacations had been taken but not updated in the plan. And so we said, managers, update that, please. And then they updated and we got a little bit of a capacity boost as a result. So we can see where we're headed. This line is pretty good. We're a little worried that we might cross over, but we're keeping an eye on that. And similarly, this chart down here is looking at the achieved cumulative work factors versus the current prediction. So the current prediction at any given date is the blue line. What we've currently achieved, and this is an exponentially decaying average, so it weighs the last 10 work days more heavily than everything before that. And we can see where we're at, and we've gradually converged to a point where they're roughly equal, which is good. And so this is basically the plan. You can get this plan, this exact spreadsheet from my website, modsoftman.com, entirely free to download. There's instructions, very detailed documentation on every field in this. There's a bunch of videos that I have out on my channel, my YouTube channel at modsoftman, that explain in much more detail these concepts and specifics about this plan as well. So if you want to put it into use, you're very free to do so. So I hope that made it a little bit more concrete for you what the method really is when you saw that plan. It really is stupidly simple, right? Dates, how much coder time do I have? How much coder time do I need? Keep it roughly balanced. And keep accumulating information and keep updating it as you go. Those are kind of the 5 steps, right? Stupidly simple. Now, everything has to be like well defined, right? So you're not in confusion about what units. Are we dealing with calendar months or are we dealing with work days, things like that. So, you need to define your terms carefully. But after that, it's stupid. Now, you can have all sorts of criticisms about this thing. But the really important thing is that it's an accumulation of information. As the uncertainties start resolving, as fast as possible, that's pulled into this plan, and everyone has visibility to that plan. From the CEO to any developer, they can all go and look at that plan themselves, and they can see exactly where we're at any given time. And so that brings an amazing amount of sanity. It eliminates the chaos from a chaotic situation. And it's just a great way to manage, So again, if there's any ideas in there that strike you, please, modify to suit, but just do something like that. Do something to manage your capacity, or else your capacity is going to manage you. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions at this point.